Welcome everyone to another episode of 10 Minute Poker Tips. I got a special guest today. His name is Matt Salsberg. Matt is I guess at this point, you're a professional poker player. This guy has $3.6 million in tournament earnings already, a WPT champion, which I am not, WPT POY, which I never was, WSOP ring winner, so at least I tied you there. But then 3 WSOP final tables, for bracelets, Cal State Championship winner, Commerce, all these accolades. And I feel like every single time there's a big tournament, you're always like deep in one of those. Unbelievable career that you have. But before that, though, you were a Hollywood writer and producer for shows like Weeds, Entourage, Kidding the War at Home. So really amazing background. So Matt, I think we, the community, would love to hear, did any of your experience in Hollywood, your creative storytelling, all of that, did that, kind of translate to poker in any way? Did that make you better at poker in any way?
Oh, hey, Derek. Thank you for the intro. It definitely did. It's weird how remarkably similar in a lot of ways Hollywood, especially writers' rooms, are to poker. There's a lot of parallels. You sit in a room all day with people, you sit around a table. So I'm around a table.
No.
We're breaking stories and you're observing people's body languages a lot. You're trying to get to the truth of stories too. And it's almost like I was bluff catching stories for a lot of years because we're trying to solve them in a truthful way. When you tell stories and you're trying to figure out stories, especially for television, it's very logic based. You're plotting things out on a board in a writer's room, and you've got a bunch of brains there to help you brainstorm. So you're not alone in a cave, which is hard, but I do that a lot also. It's kind of a combination of deductive reasoning, figuring out holes, things that don't make sense. So you're kind of always figuring stuff out. In fact, it's funny because my poker career didn't really take off until I started playing bigger buy-in events like WSOP main or WPT mains, where the structures were so good that you're actually deep. So I made my poker runs essentially in tournaments that were lower variance, because I played from like 2003 to 2010, and I didn't play any big events in those times, but I was a losing player because I'm basically playing $300 and $500 tournaments locally, and you're just at the mercy of all-in poker.
Just rolling the dice. You're rolling the dice.
Yeah, you're rolling the dice. It's kind of a no-brainer, and you're at the mercy of the deck most of the time, versus tournaments that we play now, which are much better structured than they were back then too. But once I had reached the point of playing the higher buy-ins and playing WPTs, it was kind of interesting. I played a few, and I had a feeling that once I got about 6 or 7 under my belt, I would kind of know how to figure them out, like where to step on the gas pedal, where to back off. There's a learning curve to everything, but I had a good feeling about it once I started playing it, because it wasn't just, a game of luck. And even online poker, which I played from like 2003 through 2011 or whatever, Black Friday, very similar to the turbo type of tournaments that you're playing 30, 20 big blinds deep. It was just such a luck-based game where once bluff catching and bluffing, especially in rivers and turn spots, that's where, to me, poker became an art form, and it was a skill that I started to have a knack at, that I think a lot had to do with my background as a writer. And also being in from Hollywood, you're dealing with a lot of bullshitters on a daily basis. So you're constantly, I feel like I'm a human pattern recognition machine with like lie detecting and trying to decipher what card somebody could have and range analysis. It just became a really fun side hobby for me that did morph into kind of a dual profession. I'm still a writer and producer. I haven't been on a show in a few years just because I've been battling other things in life. And then I started playing poker again after the pandemic, and poker's gone well. So it's just been fun to kind of get back in the swing and do both things. I'm actually been working all day on a writing project and getting close to trying to bring it to market. But yeah, for tips for poker, it's weird. It's just incredibly deductive and logic based, I would say.
It's interesting when you were talking about getting to the truth of stories sitting around a table with people, because I suppose if you don't throw everything up on that like whiteboard and deconstruct it, then you just throw a story out there and all of a sudden people are picking holes through everything, right? So I guess this is the way in which you sort of de-hole a story, right? You make it a little bit more bulletproof. And that's actually what you need to do at a poker table from not only your perspective when you're playing hands, like making sure that your bluffs make sense and your lines make sense, but do other people's lines make sense? And as a side note, if anybody's ever sat at a table with Matt, he'll just eerily call out the two cards in your hand sometimes, which is a little bit discouraging.
I'm not always scooping those pods, even if I know pretty much what I think an opponent's range has.
That does sound like, how you train yourself to be able to like read people at the table. So it is like this training from writing and sitting around a table, like talking to people and storytelling.
Yeah, and not just storytelling, but actually reading humans. And when you're in a room, I've been on a lot of different TV shows. So if you're in a room for 7 years with the same people, you kind of know what's going to come out of their mouth even before they even speak half the time, what they're going to pitch and so forth. So it's kind of like playing with the same group of people over and over again, where you see patterns. And I think we're just all stupid robots basically, and we're just trained to do the same thing over and over again anyway, that we're conditioned to do. So I'm sure I know I repeat myself constantly, and I can be predictable all the time. But I've been on a lot of different shows over the years, so that means kind of blending into different rooms and kind of learning how to size people up. And Hollywood's also very cliquey. You don't want to step on the wrong toes when you're in jobs, which is an interesting skill to have as far as incorporating your personality and fitting into a room, because that's a huge component to being in a writer's room. It's like being on a basketball team where you just have a role and you're a role player, and some people are the joke people and some people are the story people and some people are the head writer's best friend who sucks at everything, but you got to know how to play that game too, because they'll throw you under the bus. And so a lot of it is really just kind of reading the personalities and blending or manipulating too, because in poker you're trying to manipulate situations to your advantage. And same thing goes in writers' rooms, where either you're pushing for a narrative that you came up with because you want to be the hero in the story, or you think you have better taste than the next person, so you're pushing it for the good of the show, or you have ego reasons to push it. In both professions, I'll say though, they're very humbling. It's best to just have no ego whatsoever. In fact, it's like Stockholm syndrome, I call poker tournaments, especially it's just like Groundhog Day over and over again. It's like different day, different kind of beat. Most of the outcomes are going to be the same, but once in a blue moon, you crack through. So you get trained on how to lose. And in Hollywood, you get trained on how to get rejected. You get trained how to get your pitches shot down and shit on. So those are some similarities for the mental part of the game that essentially is like resilience, I guess. And people ask me if I would ever want to promote poker for kids or whatever, and I've seen a lot of the downsides of poker for sure, but some of the upsides are very valuable as far as life skills are concerned, and resilience especially, because you take a pounding in this game a lot of times.
Yeah, if you take poker from a more academic sense, it's the resilience, it's the probabilistic thinking, deductive reasoning, all that really great stuff. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I've seen you take a lot of really horrible beats deep deep in a lot of big tournaments, and you actually seem extremely resilient. So I guess that is, trained over years of rejection in Hollywood.
I had a moment last week or a couple weeks ago. I was deep in the Thunder Valley WPT. We were 10 left, and I came out of the clouds in that one because I didn't have any chips on day two. I had 3 big blinds for 3 hours. I made some crazy folds with 5 bigs and 6 bigs with 6s and 9s. And I don't know if they were right or not, but I was just chose to find better spots. And then I found myself first or second with 10 people left, and we were 5-handed. And I got into a spot where 4 of the 6 players left were pretty weak. I thought I was probably 2 of 10, but I was chip leader on my table. We were 5-handed, and I got into this spot with a kid who's good on my table who opened button, and I had king queen in the small blind, and I had 3 million chips. He had 2 million. I 3-bet his open, and he peeled, and I had king queen off. It came king 5-4, king of diamonds, 5 of diamonds, bet 200K. He called. The turn was a queen of diamonds. So I made top 2. Didn't think he has many flushes here, but I thought he could have redraws. So I overbet the pot and just jammed for protection, because I felt like protecting my equity in this spot to have the chip lead is much more important than maximizing a little more value. Anyway, so he time banks for 4 time banks, and I'm he's got a redraw with a diamond here. I kind of want to expose my hand at this point. And right before I was joking around with Bobby Schmidt, who was the dealer, because like he's a frequent Twitter follower of mine, and he was dealing this tournament. And Anthony Zeno came over right before the hand, so I kind of got out of the zone in this hand for a second, and so now all of a sudden I'm like in a humongous pot that I don't really want to even be on because I want a small ball at home and protect my equity for ICM stuff. And anyway, the guy 4 time banks in and he flicks in a call and he had ace queen. So he turned to queen and he had the ace of diamonds.
Oh no.
And he binks a diamond on the river.
Oh my god.
And like I kind of like I lost composure in that moment. I've taken a lot of beats, obviously, as you've seen, and usually I handle them pretty well.
You do.
But there's certain spots like I hadn't made a WPT final table actually since the year I won POY, and I made 5 that year. I was kind of psyched to be in this spot again, and I really just didn't want to do anything to blow up. And then so that kind of took a big hit to my stack, and then I couldn't spin it to the top. I got 7th anyway. They showed a clip of me kind of blasting him for the call. I just said that's the worst fucking call I've ever seen, and I helmuthed it for sure in that moment, and kind of tilted just because I felt, given what I've gone through in the last few years, making a stream final table would be sort of very special. And I knew in that moment that my chances just shot down a lot. And then I got in 10s against the same guy's jacks.
Oh no.
And I flopped a 10 and he turned a jack.
Oh my god. Oh, that was that tournament. I heard about that. Yeah, that's brutal.
And so I got 7th, and that was my bust out hand.